Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'll be playing some more Historic Brawl with another of the original Kamigawa commanders. We're going to be using Kira, Great Glass Spinner. Kira is a 3-mana 2/2 flying spirit with the ability that creatures you control have whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn. Counter that spell or ability. So Kira makes your entire board, including Kira themselves, very, very resilient. It's really hard to tap your creatures down with any abilities, remove them with instants and sorceries. The only thing your opponent can really do to your creatures are Wrath-style effects. So this deck here is going to be a mono blue tempo deck, which is kind of the best way that mono blue does aggro. We're going to be putting a bunch of flying creatures on the board, a bunch of somewhat evasive creatures, and just annoying creatures in general on the board, while holding up cheap counterspells to protect them if our opponent does happen to get a wrath effect or any kind of removal that won't target our board. So we have a bunch of the 2-mana counters like Essence Capture, Counterspell, Tail's End, Quench, Negate, Memory Lapse, and so on to protect our board state, and a bunch of just cheap, aggressive blue creatures to get out there and start beating down our opponent. So that is the general deck idea. As always, the deck list will be in the description below, but without further ado, let's get into the gameplay. So it looks like we're going to be against a Luna Apex of Wishes here, which they are using the Ghidorah card style, but this is a deck that's going to mutate this out and start casting a bunch of spells off the top of their library for free. So going to be a big stuff deck here. I do like this hand against that kind of deck. We just want to have a few counter spells to counter their big late game plays and hopefully just get onto the board under them, just get on the ground running before they start doing anything explosive, and once they do, just hold the mana up to control that. So I love that we have Pteramander as a 1-drop here. We don't have the perfect curve of creatures, no 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, but Pteramander turn 1, Kira turn 3 should be a nice start to beating our opponent down before they start casting their big plays. Alright, it looks like our opponent will keep. Let's get that Pteramander down. Our Salamander Drake, adorable friend here. This card is going to combo really well with the counter spells we'll be using on our opponent. And now we drew an exceptional 2-mana card here. We can mutate onto the Pteramander to go ahead and buff it and draw a card every time we damage our opponent. So we can really punish our opponent for playing a slow, rampy deck like a Ghidorah deck here. Our Sea Dasher Octopus here going to draw us potentially a lot of cards, although there's a Callous Dismissal from our opponent, so it looks like they are not that slow of a deck. They go ahead and have some instant speed interaction. I'm just going to drop Pteramander down, holding up the mana to mutate onto it here. The reason being is because Kira does make it so even if we try to target our own creatures, we'll be countering the first spell that we use. So if I play Kira this turn and then try to Pteramander and mutate it next turn, I will be countering the Sea Dasher Octopus. So when we have a Kira on board, we have to play the Octopus as its own separate card. The goal of pretty much all of our... well, they've got a trick here, but we'll see what it is. The goal of pretty much all of our Curious Obsession, Sea Dasher Octopus, Curiosity style effects is to dump them out on our 1-drop flyers before we drop Kira onto the board. They certainly get a lot worse once we do. Alright, no trick there. Pretty suspicious attack then. No idea what they're going for, what they have in hand here. Although it does look like they're stuck on 2 mana, that's going to be a pretty big deal. Let's see if we can't get a 4th here. We can indeed. Excellent stuff. I'd like to just hold up our instants here. Now we're just playing like your classic historic mono blue tempo game when you've got a creature on the board with evasiveness, with some ability to draw you cards as it hits your opponent. You really just want to control your position. Just hold up the counterspells for anything they're going to play, because you're going to keep getting refueled by your creature on board, and you just use that to keep your opponent out of the game. So always hold up the mana for a counterspell there. And if we didn't want to counter, we get to cast Memory Deluge. There's an argument for dropping Siren Storm Tamer, so we're hitting our opponent a little harder and still holding up our 3 mana counters. I think that'd be quite a solid play too, but just the Octopus and Memory Deluge, if we don't counter something, seems to work out perfectly fine for us there. Opponent just stuck on 2 mana all game. We're against Vorinclex Monstrous Raider this game. Could be a +1/+1 counter deck. Could be caring about loyalty counters on Planeswalkers as well. One of the scariest things that Vorinclex can do. Do like this hand against their deck, potentially. We've got good counter spells against what they're going to be doing. Just 2 mana counter spells like Disdainful Stroke and Tail's End that can counter Vorinclex, or likely a lot of their other cards. So, just a bunch of mana rocks here, Arcane Signet and Replicating Ring in the early game. Just going to hold up counters and drop down a Sea Dasher Octopus on them during their turn. This is a deck that often you have to just play it like a standard or historic deck where you don't even really acknowledge your commander's existence sometimes, because we have a lot of flash creatures to really work with our counterspells. So our opponent gets a Mecha Godzilla onto the board. Not the scariest thing ever. We are going to have to draw some of our bounce spells to deal with that, though. Or our Sea Dasher Octopus will not be getting in and drawing us any cards. So there's Kogla, the Titan Ape. So I'm going to go ahead and Tail's End that. I was going to say Titan's End, because that's what's occurring here. There's a Hullbreaker Horror coming up. We can Mystic Sanctuary, put Tail's End back on our library, but I don't think we want to. We're going to decline because we still want to hit more lands. Now we get to hold up Thrix or Disdainful Stroke. Vorinclex is going to get Disdainful Stroked here. Opponent foretells a card. Got a First Strike counter on Mechagodzilla as well now. Alright, we're at 5 mana. Still need 2 more to make it to Hullbreaker Horror. Flash in a Thrix still. I think that's still our best play. It also makes our opponent have to consider playing around counterspells, although we are out of those. So another Vorinclex here. You have to just let it resolve. We could Memory Deluge, try and get Pact of Negation. Don't think it's worth it. So Mechagodzilla lifelink First Strike here, but Thrix is going to be too big for that. No Death Touch counter, I believe. Yep, no Death Touch counter. Struggle for Skemfar, the Foretold card, to finish off our Thrix. Whirlwind Denial. Spend 4 mana on this Deluge. If we draw land, we have 2 up for Pilferer. But that's it. Don't really want to hold here, but I kind of feel like we have to. Fortunately, Replicating Ring is going to be doubling up the counters, so they'll have plenty of rings on the board soon enough. Pride Malkin, yeah, 2 more counters, we allow it. All that Whirlwind Denial can do here is force them to pay 4 more mana. They just have enough to pay for it anyway. Pass turn, let's get our Deluge down. Well, tapped land it is, and then not so sure how good Negate is going to do. Are there any lands in a graveyard? There are no lands in a graveyard, and Cemetery Illuminator actually only lets you hit spells anyway. Guess we pick up Negate, even though it won't hit a lot, and then we hit an untapped land as well. We'll play that next turn so that we have Hullbreaker Horror up. 5 mana. We can drop Pilferer on 2, still hold up Denial or Negate. There's the 8 replicating rings, so Whirlwind Denial actually kind of useless now. But we're still holding up Negate at least. Pass turn, and we've got Hullbreaker Horror mana, but it's not going to be enough to block Vorinclex. We'll have to play it in their end step. Hope it doesn't get killed by instant speed removal, and then bounce everything they have. We could double block Sea Dasher Octopus Hullbreaker Horror onto Vorinclex, but a lot could go wrong that way. So end step now, here comes Hullbreaker Horror. We do get to go to our turn, which is excellent. Play Battleground, guys. We only have 2 mana up afterwards. Not enough. Honestly, I think we're just kind of passing here. Casting Archmage's Charm to go ahead and draw 2. And put Vorinclex back in hand, then holding up Dismiss to counter Vorinclex. But I think they'll have the mana to, even after we counter Vorinclex, play it again a 3rd time. Because they have just so much mana going on here. Alright, counter on a creature and proliferate. Pretty big. Jang Yangu puts more counters on something. Actually gonna go ahead and Archmage's Charm to draw 2 pre-combat here. Oh, I guess I can't. They didn't go ahead. They didn't use Jang. Wow. So we don't get priority. I was really expecting to just go ahead and use Jang, get another counter. Because had they done that in response, I would go ahead, draw the cards, bounce one of these, then they would recast the Vorinclex, then I'd dismiss and bounce Pridemalkin, and they'd both be off board. But now, we can't do that, which is awkward. I guess we can Whirlwind Denial and then Archmage's Charm and bounce both of them, now that they're in combat. So we found a use for the Whirlwind Denial, even though they've got more than enough mana to pay for it every time. Gonna have to bounce Vorinclex again here. So we have Dismiss up, but looks like the concession from our opponent, they just don't want to deal with it. They see we still have 5 cards in hand, Memory Delusion Grave, Kira for only 3 mana from the command zone. We're going to keep bouncing their stuff, and it's going to be a really annoying game for them, even if they might still have a chance here with our low life total. Playing against the Locust God this time. That's a deck that uses a lot of wheels, cards that let them discard their whole hand and redraw a new one to spit out a ton of flying insect tokens. So really cool deck and a pretty great hand for us here. So we're just going to get into the game. I'd like to slow down their mana here, drop the Spell Pierce on the Arcane Signet. Keep them off of their big plays a turn earlier. Another hand with a bunch of excellent instant speed creatures, so we'll save Kira for later. When we can afford Kira plus holding up instant speed stuff. Crackling Drake here. That get a Censor? I think it does. Draw a spell from our opponent, definitely resolves. No more counterspells in hand here. Only 2 turns away from getting Torrential Gearhulk down, so that should be pretty sweet. So now, as we cast Spirits, we get to tap creatures down, which is cool. And we drew into Quench. Slightly bigger sensor here is going to be excellent. Counter the Locust God if they attempt to cast it. That'll be massive. I think we've got this on lock. If they cast something that can get quenched, just quench that, and then we've got Torrential Gearhulk next turn. Should be absolutely absurd. Then even once they get something on the board, we have 2 more Spirits in hand to play to tap their creatures down with Nebelgast Herald to keep getting in for the last few bits of damage at that point. Flame Sweep. That's going to have to get countered here. We'll quench that. Probably should have Spell Pierced that just in case they had another potential activation of Torrential Gearhulk in the future. Any kind of card that would return a creature to my hand, essentially. So whatever they tap out here is going to resolve. So River's Rebuke does resolve. I was going to say it would have to be stuff that doesn't target our cards because of Kira's ability, and it is, so get that Nebelgast Herald back out. Instant speed. Terramandor hold up Gearhulk seems pretty sweet to me. If we don't need to Gearhulk, we have Nebelgast Intruder, if nothing else. Terror of the Peaks is going to resolve. They have the mana to pay for a Censor. So this is where not picking Spell Pierce the first time is really going to punish us, because it would be nice to have Quench ready in the future. Tap that down, attack all, buff Terramander, and that would be lethal. And that's going to be lethal. All right. Ooh, we're going to be playing against a Marrow-Gnar here. That's a rat commander. So often played alongside Rat Colony. This one doubles up the number of rats you control by sacrificing one of them and tapping the Marrow-Gnar. It also gives all of your rats fear, which is pretty terrifying, because that means that they cannot be blocked except by artifact creatures and other black creatures. So giving a board full of rat colonies fear is a very powerful ability. We are going to trade 1-for-1 for these rats, because we're likely to have more card draw than our opponent here. And I'll take every trade I can get before they get fear. Because every 1 rat that we kill lowers the power on their board by a lot. Because it reduces, you know, all the power of this 1 rat, plus all the other rats get 1 less power. So against this deck, we're again going to have to just pretend we don't have a commander here. Play a very controlling game, holding up these counterspells. Or just a flash creature to block a rat colony. Shadow Spear going to make that a 3/2 lifelinking rat colony. We'll flash in a Sea Dasher Octopus to trade here, I think. So that next turn we could hold up Spectral Adversary plus Counterspell. And that would be if they go Swamp Rat Colony here. Looks like they are not going to do that. Have to hold up 2 mana for this Counterspell, so not casting our 3 mana Kira. Or even 2 mana for the Geistlight Snare. I'll go ahead and Geistlight Snare here since I can. Since since they can't afford to pay for it. Counterspell is just strictly better. We'll leave the strictly better card for later. Echoing Return. Return all the rat colonies from grave to hand. Pretty nice there. Now we've got the mana to play Cure and still hold up Counterspell and Wash Away. I was gonna say we could even cycle the Obstructionist, but that does cost 3, so that's a little too expensive. Burglar Rat. That's gonna make us discard a card. That's a 2-for-1. I'll just discard this Counterspell to Burglar Rat. Let a rat colony out. Start hitting our opponent now. They are going to outrace us with these rats. We're going to have to draw something good here. Especially with Shadow Spear. Shadow Spear is huge, that life gain being a big deal. There's another rat colony here. Go ahead and counter that and trade with the first one. Maronar doesn't do anything if they don't have any other rats down. So if we can deal with every single rat. There's an Essence Capture. Keep doing our thing. One thing we really have to make sure of, since we do have Kira on board, do not attempt to put a counter on one of our creatures, because then we'll be targeting a creature we control. Which means that this spell will get countered. Down to 17. Getting there slowly but surely, but again, that Shadow Spear means they can turn it around at any point. They're still just 1 mana away from Maronar, still stuck off that mana. Curious Obsession, an excellent draw as soon as we can target one of our creatures, which is not currently. We have a lot of cards in our deck that'll help us do that, like the Nebelgast card that gives a creature -2/-0. Play that, it would counter the ability, and that would be the first ability, so then we could cast Curious Obsession afterward. Shadow Spear is going to make them outrace us. We probably should have held back our Spectral Adversary there. Luckily, though, the Soul Shatter is going to help us get this Curious Obsession down. So we'll start utilizing that. Can't hold up Dismiss if I cast Cure here. So we're going to let them get another hit in with their rat colony, because Dismiss is huge, especially to protect this Spectral Adversary. If we can keep drawing an additional card every turn, it's going to be very big. That's how we keep up and make sure we have a steady supply of counterspells and creatures to trade into their rats. Go ahead and just tap out Dismiss here, draw the card, because a draw card from there, plus drawing card per turn, plus drawing card from Curious Obsession, means we've got a lot of ways to get the next counterspell, and there's a Rewind. Perfect. Although, did not realize I don't quite have the mana for that, unfortunately. But Cure on board makes it so Spectral Adversary probably doesn't get shot down by a removal spell here. Gonna let them get another rat colony hit in, because I don't want Kira to die and then allow them to use a targeted removal spell on Spectral Adversary. So I want to wait till we have a counterspell up to do that. So Pattern Matcher is going to go ahead and get a rat colony, since that is the most prominent creature type on their board. Match that pattern real quickly. Supreme Will to hold up. Perfect. Absolutely holding Kira back here. We are actually pretty worried about the amount of damage we're taking here. But Rattle Chains is going to help with that a lot. And now we're okay with trading Kira. So there's Marrow-Gnar again. Can't let their stuff get fear or we'll die on the spot. So we'll rewind that. Should have Supreme Willed it. Always playing the wrong counterspells. Trade with that rat colony. Have to take the 3 though. Battleground Geist, 5 for that, and we are still holding up 5 for Supreme Will plus Rattle Chains. Yeah, get an extra damage in here too. Cosmos Charger, nice flash flyer there. Flash that and out of nowhere. Shadow Spear onto the Pattern Matcher, that's a really big deal. 4/4 Trample Lifelinker. So I think we Cosmos Charger here. Hope for no instant speed removal. 1-for-1 trade there, thanks to the +1/+0. Do have instant speed removal, they're going to go ahead and use it on the Spectral Adversary to stop us from drawing more cards here. Do they have a second instant speed removal spell? No, they do not. (3/2) Rat Colony, Hall of Storm Giants, pretty decent draw here. Spend 7 on Kira, still hold up Supreme Will. Probably try to trade into Rat Colony with the Rattle Chains instead, though. Another Rat Colony. Take 3 trample damage. This if it weren't for Shadow Spear, like we'd still be at like 20 here. We'd be having an excellent time, but Shadow Spear has done so much work. Probably would already be dead if they didn't have that much life gain, and the trample is really painful. Ooh, Memory Lapse is nice. Can activate Hall of Storm Giants now to block this rat colony. So now I think we're good. I think we have it on lock because we have just a giant ward creature to block with, plus that creature's benefiting from Kira's ability as well, so it's just highly unlikely they can kill this Hall of Storm Giants. Another rat colony. The hall is a 7/7, so we're still good. Pass turn, they're not going to run into the hall there, so let's go ahead and draw a card. Ooh, Torrential Gearhulk for sure. For certain. We can even just do that and redo it immediately. Oops. I think I'll go for that. Do another Supreme Will. Draw another card here. I guess a Departed Deckhand. Just another evasive creature seems fine by me. We're probably not casting it though, probably just holding on to the Hall of Storm Gods mana. Hall of Storm Giants, that is. Get some damage in, hold up the blockers. Deadly Dispute. Draw some cards off the rat, see if they find any outs here. Could send a message. Spend all the mana into dropping a Maronar. Actually, if Maronar resolves, they have Fear, but I have an artifact creature, so we're fine. Unfortunately for our opponent. Whew. Don't have lethal here, though. Actually, yeah, we do, because the Hall of Storm Giants. So, yep, there's the concession from our opponent. That is going to be another victory for the Kira deck. So, as you can see there, Kira is a pretty great card. It is quite a double-edged sword, which can come up a lot when you're trying to play like a mono blue tempo deck like I played here. I just made it very reminiscent of the mono blue tempo during like Ravnica Legion Standard. That was my favorite standard on Magic Arena that was ever available. So I made it, you know, the Terramander suiting up with Curiosity, Curious Obsession style cards with Spell Pierces held up, stuff like that. That kind of mono blue tempo deck. And as you can see, it functioned really well even just without ever casting Kira. So the awkward part about that, though, is when you do cast Kira, there are cards in here that are really good at fueling mono blue tempo decks like Curiosity and Curious Obsession that are really awkward with Kira. So maybe not the best Kira build ever. However, if you do draw these cards early and you curve them out well, Kira does a lot of work protecting your nice early game plays that you've put it onto. So, you know, turn 2, turn 3, maybe you just wait to cast Kira till like turn 6, turn 7 or something after you've got the early game evasive threats that are suited up with a Curiosity, Curious Obsession, or Sea Dasher Octopus style card. So again, that's the general play pattern of the tempo decks. Make sure you're drawing an additional card every turn somehow, some way, so that you can make sure you still have the fuel to keep your opponent under control. And then, as long as you've committed any evasive threat to the board, if you just keep drawing an extra card every turn, holding up counterspells, you can usually keep your opponent on lockdown at least long enough to find lethal. So really nice games there from the Kira deck, but that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and we've got Kamigawa Neon Dynasty right around the corner. February 10th on Thursday, we will be drafting Kamigawa Neon Dynasty on stream pretty much all day at the link in the description below, and we will have the daily draft videos at launch as well. So once again, thank you all for watching. Exciting things on the horizon. I will see you again very soon for some more Magic Arena.